Welcome to the channel, everybody. Danilo Kaprick here, still the best dressed man in tech sales. And today we're going to answer the question of how does software sales really work? In other words, how do software sales reps spend their time? What's the goal of software sales? How are you measured? Don't worry, we're going to answer all those questions you have right now. All right, guys, so when we think about how does software sales work, really there's one major goal in software sales, and that is for companies to sell as much software as humanly possible, okay? That's the obvious goal there if you didn't know already. And in terms of how you are measured in software sales, you typically have a quota that you need to hit. Sometimes it's a monthly quota, sometimes it's a biannual quota, so you might have a quota for the first 6 months and then another quota for the last 6 months. Or you might have an annual quota where it's, hey, in the next 12 months, you need to sell this much software, okay? That's typically how folks are measured, and the ultimate goal, again, is to sell as much as you humanly can. And back to the question of how does it exactly work? The way you can think about how does software sales work is essentially every single rep is trying to do the same thing, which is they're trying to hit their quota, and they're doing this by going into a process where they identify cold leads, aka people who have never heard of them before, and turn them into closed deals, all right? And there's a lot of steps within this process that we go through, but ultimately that's how we get paid at the end of the day, is by finding people who have never heard of us before, getting them to learn more about our software, ultimately trying it out, and then at some point signing a contract or an agreement to actually begin using it on a company-wide level, okay? So in order to go through that process, right, and identify cold prospects, get them to eventually close deals, there's a lot of steps we go through as software sales reps. So let's talk about what some of those steps are. So the process, let's break it down. Step one in the process, again, this is something that almost every software sales rep is focused on doing, is number one, they have to identify who is a prospect that they should even go after. Okay, that's definitely step one. And the way we do this is usually our company, whoever you work for, will give you a list of companies that you can go after. Typically, these companies are segmented by geography. Sometimes they're segmented by headcount or employee size. Sometimes it's revenue bands. But either way, you can expect them to give you a list of maybe 100 to 1,000 companies, and they're going to say, all right, Danilo, here's your list. You can go after everybody on this sheet. Go after them. Go get it. Go make some sales, right? And what we want to do there is we want to understand who's a good fit, who's most likely to buy our software. And don't get me started, but there's a whole research process that goes into that and how we should prioritize those accounts. But essentially what we want to do is once we have this list, we want to start doing some outreach, okay? And we want to do outreach because step one in our process is we need to meet with these prospective customers. Now, we can do that in a couple of ways. We can do it via cold call and set up a meeting, or we can send them email messages. We can connect with them on LinkedIn. But step one is really getting the buyer's attention. So that way we can have a meeting and discuss, how likely or unlikely are they to be a good fit for what we're selling at the end of the day. All right, guys, so that's definitely step one of how does software sales work. And again, it's a major activity that most software sales reps are spending their time on. All right, so number two, once we've found some prospects who are, likely to be a good fit, but also that we've gotten a response from or they're open to meeting with us, what we want to typically do is have what's called a discovery call. And we're going to have a discovery call so we can understand what is their business about, what are they trying to do, and is there any link between what we can help customers do with our software and what they are trying to do as a company. Because if there is, then obviously we have a strong reason to make a sale, and we can make a really nice business case as to why they should use our software. So setting up these discovery meetings is, again, another activity that a lot of software sales reps spend the majority of their time trying to do at the end of the day. All right, so usually after we have these discovery calls, typically the next step, but not always, is having some sort of a demo where we get to show them the product, or they get to, test drive it in some way. Maybe it's a free trial, whatever. But we want to demo the product so they have an idea of what does it look like, how can they use it, and what kind of value can it generate for them, most importantly, right? Now, after the demo, typically what we do is a POC, which is either a proof of concept. Some people call it proof of value, it doesn't really matter. But either way, this is them test driving the actual software. So sometimes it'll be a free trial, sometimes it'll be an agreed upon time that you guys coordinate, and you let them use the software at no cost, but you let them use it in a very specific way. And what I mean is they're gonna say, okay, we wanna test your software and see if it can help us achieve XYZ results. So maybe what you're going to do is set up an experiment where for 2 weeks they use your software, do what they need to do to try and attain that result. And what you do at this stage is usually you have an agreement with the customer and say, okay, if you're able to hit XYZ result in this amount of time, then we think you should move forward with our software because it's doing what you wanted it to do in the first place, right? We call that a POC again, but that's kind of the next step in the process. Once they've demoed and seen the product, we want to get them to actually use it in a test drive sort of fashion so that way they can make a better decision about whether or not this is for them. So after the POC and they've been able to try out the product, what we want to typically do next is move towards pricing, okay? So they've tried our product at this point, they validated that they can get the results they wanted. Now, of course, they're gonna ask the very great question of how much does this cost, right? So sometimes that is a very good thing for them to ask because that means they're serious about buying. Sometimes people get nervous about price. I wouldn't be. I think it's a great buying sign, obviously. But either way, you're gonna have to get to the pricing stage at some point. And there's going to be different advice on how you should address this part. Some people say you should show price earlier. Doesn't matter, but again, this is part of the process we go through as software sales reps in order to get from cold lead to closed deal. So after pricing has taken place, typically we'll agree on some sort of price or a way to structure the agreement, and then we have to do something that every sales rep will tell you in software sales that we don't really enjoy that much is legal review, okay? This is when we give our contract to the lawyers at the company that is evaluating our software, and they have to look at all the little, things that are in our agreements and make sure there's nothing in there that puts them at significant risk. And the reason I said a lot of people don't enjoy this step that much is because it takes really long, it's out of your control, and let's be real, I don't know about you guys, but I don't have a law degree, so a lot of the stuff that they say goes over my head. And we also have to be the liaison between our legal department and their legal department, which at times can be a little annoying, but hey, it's part of the job. So typically, guys, that is the last or one of the last steps in the software sales process from a cold lead to a closed deal. And after the legal process is passed, typically what we're doing at that point is we're asking for a signature, okay? So this will usually be a C-level executive, maybe a CEO, CFO, CMO, depends who is buying the software, what department is buying the software. But either way, that's going to be the last and final step, is for them to actually execute the agreement, sign it, and officially kick off the partnership so that we can start doing business together. So overall, guys, those are the steps we go through, again, in software sales to go from cold prospect to closed deal. And that's how we're measured at the end of the day, is by how many times we can do that successfully and close as many deals as possible to hit our quota, but hopefully exceed the quota as well. So once that contract is signed, typically sales reps get paid 30 days after that. That's how it's been everywhere I worked. And essentially that is how software sales works, you guys. We get a list of customers, we find out who's a good fit, we do what it takes to get the meeting, we show them the product, we get them to use it, we have a legal review, we have a pricing conversation, and then if everything works out, they sign the contract. So overall, guys, this is an abbreviated schedule of events that typically we go through to, again, go from that cold prospect to closed deal. And that's a nice outline of how software sales really works and how we get paid at the end of the day. So again, I hope this has given you a glimpse into what software sales is like and how does the whole process work. If you have any other questions, let me know, shoot me a DM. But either way, if you enjoyed the content, please hit the subscribe button below. Go follow me on LinkedIn, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Take it easy.